It's been almost 3 years since The Division captured my interest and I've never looked back. Whilst many will have left The Division almost immediately upon release due to its lack of anti-cheat and endgame at launch, which is completely justified, many stuck around, myself included, and watched Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment work tirelessly to provide the game we all wanted. Aside from some historical bugs and balancing issues, I think the developers achieved this in the end, but more importantly, they showcased the sort of commitment I knew would strive to create a brilliant sequel. 3 years later, and the private beta for The Division 2 is available for download and testing. Having played the beta a significant amount and attending and capturing footage at the Paris capture event almost 2 weeks ago, I think it's time I give you my impressions so far. I've been lucky enough to put about 20 hours into the Division 2 private beta. It's important to note that aside from the selected level 30 endgame characters you can choose between, which can only be used for the one endgame invasion mission, you are only able to reach level 7 in the private beta within the open world and level 10 within the dark zone. There is a lot of stuff that you cannot access, so my initial impressions of the game are purely based on the private beta and do not represent my final impressions for the full release, of course, so please bear that in mind. The first thing I noticed when doing any activity within the Division 2 was how great the game felt to play. The movement is considerably different to the Division. The movement feels smooth, responsive, and the cover-to-cover movement is everything you'd ever want from a cover-based shooter. Some might argue that the character running animation feels like you're floating, and to some extent that would be true, but for me it doesn't feel like it's not right. Was the running animation in the Division 1 better? Yeah, probably. And I would like the developers to re-examine the running animation within the Division 2. With that said though, the changes made to the movement feel great. You'll be glad to note that the infamous chicken dance has been almost removed entirely from the Division 2, and that's because of the significant changes they made to the movement animation. A much wider turn radius and much slower strafe mean unless you found a way to bypass these intentional features with external input, you can guarantee PvP will be more about skill and less about who can strafe their way out of trouble better. Movement was very much a huge problem within the Division, and I can already see how improved this is within the Division 2. Weapons feel great as expected. Weapons felt great within the Division, especially from levels 1 to 3. I like how so far every weapon appears to be viable, at least for PvE. Of course, there will always be a meta within any looter-shooter type game, and that already appears to have surfaced within PvP. Shotguns and weapons with increased magazine size like assault rifles appear to be the meta right now. Unfortunately, there doesn't appear to be any 9mm magazine mods which will fit the SMGs in the beta. So all SMGs have their standard magazine size, meaning most SMGs seriously lack in their ability to deal damage over time, aside from the PP-19 which has a large magazine size as standard, and damage over time is very important in the Division 2. I suspect on full release this will change. Shotguns are powerful right now, as are snipers, because they cause significant stagger. Stagger was introduced and abused in the Division, so was quickly removed by the developers after a community backlash. The devs have already stated the stagger will be removed from the full release of the game, so this is welcome news. Unfortunately, as my impressions are purely based on the beta itself and not promises of changes at launch, I'd have to say PvP is a little frustrating because of the stagger abused by players, but we'll move on to PvP shortly. In general, the weapons do feel great to use, and I didn't expect anything less. I'm excited to see all of the mods on all of the weapons at launch. PvE feels much better than any PvE I experienced within the Division. The NPCs appear to have much better AI, and whilst they can become a little bullet spongy when you play on hard mode, generally the time to kill is much better. The various factions you encounter seem pretty cool too, and each one has their own ways of fighting, making every encounter quite different. On top of that, the advanced AI makes every encounter quite dangerous without the proper cover. It appears the devs have really made cover quite important in the Division 2, but I can report back with confidence that whilst cover is your friend, a run and gun type playstyle is not your enemy. Just don't expect to be face tanking missions anymore. It feels like the Division 2 has the right balance between a cover-based shooter and the Division 1. PvE within the private beta has convinced me to invest a lot more time into this aspect of the game when the Division 2 launches, and I can already see, just on the main missions and side missions, how raids could be truly somewhat special in the Division 2 if the devs do it right. The open world of The Division 2 feels amazing. It's expansive, lonely, and yet there's always something to do. Random question marks display themselves on the map, which indicate a possible enemy stronghold. Roaming named NPCs appear as bounties on the map, and it's your job to track them down. Random supply drops spawn in the middle of the street. Will you get there in time, or will the NPCs extract the loot? Yes, that is a thing. The list is endless here. There is an abundance of rewards in the open world just waiting to be claimed, all of which will help you personally, or if not, they'll help the civilians you're trying to help recover. It feels great just to roam the open world, fighting NPCs, finding weapons or gear crates, finding collectibles, finding clues to the lore of The Division 2, finding so much, and yet it still feels quite lonely, but recovery is all around you. I'm already in love with the open world and have yet to actually explore very much of it because there was very little in the beta to explore. Just like The Division, the open world is truly spectacular and something that cannot be missed. On a more negative note, there are some things I think needs to be addressed before launch day. Armor is too important. There was a time in The Division when armor was really the only major attribute you would invest in because it simply beat every other stat. If you ever play The Division, you'll remember when armor mitigation was so important, it was really the only thing you needed. This appears to be the same for The Division 2, and it needs to change. Right now, armor is simply too important, and health is just not important at all. It could take me 30 bullets from a magazine to take the armor off an agent, and a further 3 bullets to down them. Health is a stat you can roll, but why would I invest into health when it simply does nothing once armor has been removed? Armor needs to be important, of course, but right now, it's very unbalanced. And I would like to see the devs address this before launch. I would like to see health actually mean something in The Division 2. Delta errors appear to be a big problem right now, although I've not experienced them myself too often. Other issues I've experienced are few and far between, like falling through the world, or not being able to climb ladders, or being able to climb ladders but seeing through the world whilst climbing said ladders. I've also experienced a white glow whilst passing through certain doors. My technical knowledge of games is very limited, so I'm going to assume these issues are not big issues and will be fixed at launch. And let's not forget, this is a beta, and that's exactly what this is for, so I did expect some issues. Just look at Anthem's demo. Aside from these minor issues though, technically the game has been very stable for me, and I've had a pretty smooth run. I am not naive to the fact others have experienced significant problems with the beta though. What's good to know is the devs have been very active and communicated very well about their intentions to address the problems with the game. That's not to say they will all be fixed, but unlike Bungie, the devs are not afraid to communicate that either. Now, I didn't want this impressions video to take too long because we've really only experienced a snippet of the full game. I kind of just wanted to look at the stuff that really came to my attention, if that makes sense. Now, is there anything I wholly dislike about The Division 2? Yes, possibly. The turrets within the Dark Zone are a huge talking point right now because they are very effective. Some would say too effective. And the design of the checkpoints mean it's still possible to checkpoint camp. Right now the turrets are so strong, you can simply run past the checkpoints and be downed immediately. That's without actually going into the compounds around the checkpoints. You don't actually have to be within those compounds. Now this has to be changed right away. With that said though, the compounds have not been designed very well and still offer some very long lines of sight. If the strength of snipers are not changed at launch, it's very easy to sit in cover out of range of the turrets, just one-shotting people as they come out of the checkpoint. I appreciate that the devs have attempted to stop the checkpoint camping in DZ, but it's not working currently. My suggestion would be to redesign the checkpoint so there is no direct line of sight to the checkpoint door, and only allow turrets to fire on rogues who enter the compound, not on rogues that are outside of the compound boundaries. I started this impressions video talking about how great The Division 2 felt. For me, how something feels to play and how much fun I have is what's important. The Division 2 is a significant step up in terms of content, enemy AI and PvE, but more than that, it feels as good if not better to play than The Division did. As I stressed before though, this is a beta and there is so much more to come. I personally feel that The Division 2 could be contender for Game of the Year if they iron out all of the problems and deliver on their promise of a great story campaign and endgame. I want to thank you all for watching this video. Whilst I would hope you all respect my impressions of the beta, I would advise you to check out the beta for yourself, because obviously my impressions may be different to yours. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like on the video, it does help me out, and subscribe if you are interested in consistent Division content, especially Division 2 content, of course. With that said, until the next one, Epic out.